So hi, my name is Jake Wheatmartian, and I'm here to tell you today why journalism is important, especially in today's world where we get news thrown at us left and right. We are searching on our phones, going through our Twitter feed or our Facebook news feed, and we see all these different articles about like the next big thing and the next big event. Or we turn on the news at night and we see all these journalists and reporting on news that is going on around us. That's exactly what the world is like today. We get various other news sources and we get a lot of conflicting opinions, and we have Uncle Jerry over there who's just like, you shouldn't trust any of that or anything like that. And I'm just here to tell you today why journalism is important. Alright, so journalism is mainly important because it has to do a lot with how we get our news, and that's how we report our news. When the breaking news is given to the news anchors from the journalists that are out in the field. So next thing I'm going to be talking about is reporting the news. So we receive our news in various different ways nowadays. Like I said before, we have your nightly news, your social media, the newspaper, things like word of mouth, a bunch of different things like that. And if we didn't have journalism to report to the news studios, then how would we get our news? Would we just say if someone was walking by and they would see something, or they would just go on and tell others? Like, we've all played the game telephone. We all know how that turns out. Like, the story gets jumbled, it gets messed up, and a lot of different things happen with it, and you don't necessarily get what is true about what happened. But the thing is, we have to be careful of where we get our news from. So like I said, a lot of us get news from like social media, different online outlets. We have to be careful as a society to make sure that that news is credible. We'll get more into like fake news later, but there are different ways that you can check to see if your sources are credible. One is to make sure that just kind of like cross-reference your news article that you're reading with different ones, because if it's a true event, different news outlets may cover it. Another one is just to make sure you know it's not like a parody account or anything like that. Again, that goes in more into fake news. And actually, let's talk about that right now. So if your sources aren't credible, then they may be making up stuff just to get people to believe whatever you're thinking, or they may do it to get page clicks, or there's also this thing where it's an article, but it's also an ad disguised as an article. There's just a whole lot of stuff that goes into it. And now I just want to touch on one major subject that I already referenced previously, and that is fake news. So, really fake news has really come into play when Donald Trump here took his presidency, and he started calling out big news outlets like Fox News, CNN, a lot of different things like that. And that may be one reason why people don't trust news sources today. And it's also because sometimes the news can be unreliable with their stories, especially if it's like breaking news and they don't have all the facts yet. They just need to wait for everything to roll in, and so they can get all the facts straight and get the right news out to you. I know an example of this is when there's like, God forbid, like a massive attack or something like that on the nation. They'll always put like the death count higher than what they think that is, and then they'll slowly lower it down. That can be perceived as fake news. Another reason why there can be fake news is pretty much people are just making stuff up. This is bad because you're getting people to believe something that isn't real. So anyway, this is bad because obviously people will believe the wrong things, and that's not good for everyone because they want the straight facts. I can even go into some examples of fake news if you would like. So let's turn it over to my field correspondent, who is in the process of showing you guys how fake news can be created. Know that we do not condone this activity because we want to focus on nice, fresh journalism and why it is important. And to understand why it is important, we must show you how it can be falsified. Oh, thank you, other me. Let's see, what does this tweet say? Every year, People magazine calls me many times to beg me to be their sexiest man alive. But I always say no because I don't have time for their photo shoots. That's from a Donald Trump parody account on Twitter. Hilarious. So anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about some key concepts of fake news and whatnot. Actually, I got an example for you today besides this here parody account. I'm actually going to doctor a photo just as an example. So here we have the infamous The Economist cover page of Barack Obama around the BP oil spill. So as you can see here, or I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can see it better. As you can see here, you have Barack Obama by himself here on the left, looking down at the oil spill. He looks kind of sad. It's kind of darkened, different things like that. Notice how the lady is not there though. So it looks like it kind of makes it more depressing, more like he's lonely, different things like that. If you look over here on the right though, you can see that he is actually with two other people, if not more. And then there's also some debris on the ground and other things like that. So actually, I'm going to try and make this look like the shot that they had in mind. See, obviously this isn't professional, but once I'm done with this sentence, as you can see, I'll put it up on the screen there. You can see that she's out of the picture. She's doctored away. So if I had a little bit more time on that, I could turn it into a magazine cover. So obviously doctoring photos is bad, and really the only time that you should be doctoring photos is when you're making dank memes just like this. It's the battle of the century. I did this in high school. This was one of my first projects. I'm proud of this. That's it from me. I'll send you over to the studio with the original Jake. Thank you, other me. So, how can we go about in making sure that fake news dwindles and just pretty much isn't a thing anymore? Well, one thing that we can do is, like I said before, just make sure that your sources are credible. Make sure what you're reading is a reliable news story and that you're getting the facts. You can cross-reference different news sources. You can check and see if it's a parody account like other me just showed you. You can do a bunch of different things. Also, you can check and see who wrote it. Normally, in my personal opinion, if the author doesn't put their name on there, then it's probably not like a likely source because they don't want it to be traced back to them and give them a bad rep. So, and also one really good thing that you can do to make sure that fake news is not a thing anymore is just to make sure to not make it up. Don't be one of those news dummies that just makes up a news story for clicks or views or anything like that. Don't be a news dummy. So with all these fake news sources and all this effort to make sure that what we're reading is real, why is journalism important? And that brings me to my next point. Because it's important. Trust me. And the reason I say that is just because what would we do without it? How would we know what's going on? And I know I said that before, but just think about it. How would we know if, say, something was going on in the Middle East? How would we know about it back here in the United States? No one would report on it because journalists wouldn't be there. And another important point about journalism is that, especially in America, we get a lot of different viewpoints on things. It may not seem good to some, but trust me, it is very beneficial when you look at other countries where all their news sources and all their journalists are limited to what they say and how they say it and how it's presented to their audience. We get viewpoints from the left, the right, conservative, the liberal, anything from the big events to the small events, whether it be like a war or something, or it could be like there's a sale going on down at your local pet shop. Dogs are awesome, just gonna say that. So another point that I want to touch on is how would it affect society if journalism just vanished? It just got wiped away from the earth and we had no clue what it was. Like I said before, a lot of us get our news from news sources. They wouldn't have anything to report on. We get it from social media. We would literally just be reading people's everyday tweets and they would have no clue what's going on in the world and how it will affect them in the long term, unless if they heard it through like word of mouth or something like that. And just other different kinds of news outlets and different things like that. Going back to my previous point, if journalism didn't exist, then we could also spread fake news and let people believe whatever is told to them, especially if they're really gullible, and there's always going to be extremely gullible people out there. So journalism, it's important. Just trust me on this one. It comes down to the Constitution, and it comes down to our amendments. It's freedom of expression. It's freedom of the press. That just pretty much says that we can report on pretty much whatever we want to report on, and thankfully, most of the time, that's news events that people need to know, whether it be like something political or someone's giving away free tuition. I don't know. So if this would all go away, it would have a great impact on society, because people, in my opinion, would just be clueless and they wouldn't have any idea of what's going on in the world around them. So I hope I hit all the major points of why journalism is important in today's world and how we can fix the bad journalism and replace it with good journalism. And now, as you can see, it's outro time. So just like every news anchor, I just want to leave you with a sign off. My name is Jake Weemartian, and I hope you have a great day, but an even better night. Have a great day and a better night.